Hello everyone, this is Miss Van Hook, and in this video we'll look at the different types of friction. First two we'll kind of compare and contrast are static friction and sliding friction. These people are having a jolly time moving their couch, and we notice they're pushing on their couch, but it's not going anywhere yet. And if you've moved a heavy object before, you notice that as you apply force, it doesn't quite move until you apply enough force. And static friction is that force of friction that's holding the object in place. You're pushing on it, but it won't go anywhere yet. Static friction is keeping it in place. But eventually, if they push hard enough on this couch, it will suddenly start to move, and they'll be able to keep it in motion. But there'll still be some sliding friction between the couch and the floor. The static friction was much harder to overcome. Once they can get the couch moving, they'll be able to keep it moving much more easily. Static friction is that friction you must first overcome to get the object moving, and it is the strongest friction force. You need to apply the most force to get something started in motion than to maintain motion. Sliding friction, of course, is this friction that an object encounters once it's moving, and it's simply sliding against another surface, like a couch along the carpet, or your pencil even, as your pencil is writing against your notebook paper. We can see static friction in this example right here. As they lift this long board, we'll pause it, there's a block of wood on here. We know that gravity is trying to pull everything in this scene towards the center of the earth, and that when there's less support from this board, gravity will be able to pull this block down. But right now, this rough wooden surface has a lot of static friction. It's holding the block in place and won't allow it to move until there's just enough gravitational pull to start to accelerate the block. So we see that happen. And once we overcome static friction, boom, sliding friction is now what the block began to encounter. As we see that one more time, static friction holds it in place, but once that force, that strong friction force, has been overcome, now there's just this force of friction that's slowing the block down as it moves down the board. We can see another example here of static friction and rolling friction. Same idea. This person's starting to push on the car, and as they start to push, they have to apply more force to get it going, to beat static friction, than they do once they have the car in motion. We notice this gentleman's able to push the car only because it's on wheels. He would have a much more difficult time if this car had no wheels and all the metal was scraping along the sidewalk, the pavement. Rolling friction occurs anytime we have something with wheels or it moves in a rolling motion, and it's always easier to move something with wheels than it is to slide it. Those people moving the couch in the first example would have an easier time if they put their couch on some sort of wheeled cart. It'd be a lot easier to move. But they still have to overcome static friction to get it in motion. The final type of friction involves fluids. And usually when we hear the word fluid, we think of just a liquid like water. But a fluid is either a liquid or a gas. So it could be water, could be air, could be orange juice. And fluid friction is simply the resistance force, because remember, all types of friction slow down motion, try and prevent something from moving. Fluid friction is that resistance force an object encounters when they're moving through a fluid. So in this animation, we see Michael Phelps, the world-class swimmer, and we see as he does this swim stroke, we see that resistance, all those bubbles, as his hands and legs and body try to move through the water. He's able to move through the water because of the fluid friction. He's pushing against the water, and the water is resisting him, pushing back against him. And we notice that compared to moving through a liquid, it's much easier to move through a gas. This person is falling through the air very quickly until they open their parachute. They have a bigger surface area that helps slow them down so they aren't going too fast when they come to Earth. Gases provide less resistance than liquids. So those are our 4 types of friction: static friction, sliding, rolling, and fluid.